attempt to try and close out some of my other projects that I've got open right now. I have a return back to the Necromunda boxed set. I've already painted the Goliath gang, and I've still to finish this Orlock's gang. I've got a few projects running, and I think it's probably best to start closing some of them out before carrying on with other things. Some of those other projects that I've got require priming to be done, which needs to be done outside, and the weather here is very cold and snowy right now, so that won't be happening. So I've got plenty of other miniatures that are primed and ready to be painted, and these Orlocks have been sitting for, well, they were certainly done, the three certainly done last year, so this has been sitting unfinished for quite a time. The aim is to have the two base gangs painted from the boxed set. In the box set, it comes with only plastic miniatures, but I wanted to make use of the kind of upgraded metal ones. I've made an effort to get a hold of them, and I think it's nice to have those making up the gang, just for the variation in the minis, and well, I mean, it really does look better when you see them there than just having them all the one or two sculpts that came in the box set. I did, as with the Goliaths, paint a couple of the plastic minis just to make use of them. They're now done, and I've got one of the Dwarfs done, and I can show you closer looks at those later on. But I've still got the other 5 to do. I'm just aiming to have 8 in each gang for a start. You know, that's what came in the gang boxes, so that's what I'm aiming for. So the thing for me is finding the inspiration, or at least the guidance, in terms of the paint schemes, the colour schemes to go for. On the box cover there, you get a very nicely painted gang. You get that very distinctive House Orlock look, the blue jeans, the bandanas, the sashes, and it's a nice cohesive colour scheme. You also get some interesting alternatives in the painting and modelling guide that came with the boxed set. So there gives you some tips on how to get started with them, various stages of painting. And the Goliath gang up there that's pretty much the colour scheme I went for, but you can see that they're making full use of the plastic minis that came in the box. And the same with House Orlock there, where they've gone for this red and blue scheme. And then it goes on to talk about conversions. I think the nice thing about Necromunda was you were really encouraged as a hobbyist to get stuck in and make changes, and one of the rules in the game was that the miniatures should fully represent the loadout that the individual character is meant to be carrying. So I mean, in this instance there, this guy's got, looks like a shotgun and a plasma pistol. So I mean, you would expect that that's the exact loadout that he was meant to have. And then there's some nice terrain setups there, using the stuff that came in the box. I think maybe more than one box worth shown there. And then some tips on how to make your own, making use of those famous plastic bulkheads. And then the stuff I like, and where I've been basing a lot of the terrain that I've been building for 40k or for Necromunda. They show you some nice examples of terrain built using what looks like, you know, the kind of household waste, you know, the tubes and packets of things. And you end up with a fantastic board there. And then some more alternative colour schemes on the back page. So plenty of ideas, you know, in the box. Then of course also in the White Dwarf magazine, they were always keen to pad out the game and write supplements in extra missions and whatnot. So in this issue 191, yeah, page 35, if I just go forward to page 35. So here you get some nice close-up images of the very well painted various gangs. An article called Wanna Join by Andy Chambers. But what I'm going to find useful now in painting my Orlocks is this full page spread with all the different metal miniatures painted up. And this is the kind of references I'm using when I'm painting my miniatures. I'm looking in White Dwarf or, you know, the books that came in the boxes to see how they did it. So the one there, for example, you know, the Juve there, if I can kind of maybe adjust the light a little bit to make it easier to see this, but yeah, the only thing you'll notice is I'm not going with the goblin green bases for the miniatures I paint. Anything 40k related for me just doesn't suit being on the green. I know that's maybe not how many people would like it, but certainly for the fantasy stuff, the Warhammer Quest stuff, the Blood Bowl, Advanced Hero Quest, whatever, those will all be goblin green bases for me. But when it comes to 40k, I kind of wish that they'd maybe differentiated the two systems. And I think it would have suited it if they'd gone for something more alien. You know, for me, a kind of rust orange, rust red basin type would have still had the same vibrancy, but would have given those miniatures their own look, their own theme. I think would have fitted in better with the overall 40k or the Necromunda aesthetic, just opposed to the green grassy kind of base, which I'm not sure quite suits the Necromunda minis when they're shown, you know, up in the metal gantries and walkways and things like that. I'm not saying the red would be a perfect match either, but I just think there might have been a nice distinction between the two. But anyway, that's the plan. I've got 5 of them to do, which isn't too intimidating. A little bit of batch painting and then some detail work. So I'll look out some paints and get started. Yeah, that's an example of one of the completed ones, the metal Juve. Kind of look I'm going for with these. Sticking pretty close to what's shown in those examples. But I think it is worth moving up to the metal sculpts if you can get hold of them. I mean, this one in particular, it's a great stance. Very cinematic. Captured so much character in that pose. Anyway, we'll get started with the flesh tones. I'm just going to use Guilliman flesh for that. Just going to try and find all the flesh areas exposed. As always, I'm trying to get an entire area or section painted in one go, so the contrast paint can flow and dry and do what it does without leaving tide marks, hopefully. And I'm not worried about going over the edge. And then also just washing out the brush after every section is completed. Both trying to keep the brush moist, a little bit moist with the water, but also just try to stop the paint, especially this contrast paint, drying into the bristles. Trying to avoid that if I can. If I feel there's maybe too much being left behind in an eye socket, just come back in with a clean brush and just pull away some of the contrast paint. But I mean, all the other kind of marks and things being left as it dries. Most of that will be smoothed away later when I start doing some layering and highlighting. So I'll get on with the other 4. And I am making sure between each miniature just to close the lid on the pot and give it another shake, because it does want to dry quickly, so I'll keep it moving. Otherwise it just kind of dries in the lid. Even just adding this flesh tone to the model makes such a difference to it. Starts to define the areas. And I'm making the most of this chance to be pretty messy. And do all the tidying up later. Okay, so that's all the skin tone done, or at least the first layer of it. Next is going to be the white. So just before I apply the white, this blue wash that I've got here for the white parts of the clothing, just going to come in and tidy up some areas where I've gone over the edge when doing the flesh tone. I'd start that with Ulthwyn Grey, just because it tends to have quite a good coverage before maybe using some white if needed. But I mean, that tends to do the trick. So I'm going to be using white on the cloth wrapped around the legs on the miniatures that have that, like this one on his right leg. The heavy's got one also. I'm just doing that to have little consistent themes for the miniatures. So I'm going to have that kind of colour scheme running through them. And this guy had one on his arm, and one on his leg, done in the white. And then the sash down the front is more of the kind of creamy bone colour. And the bandanas around the head also in that kind of creamy tone. Yeah, the blue here is just the same stuff that I've used on my high elves. And showed that recipe in the first video for the high elves painting series that I did. It's just a kind of mix of a few different contrast paints that I can use when trying to paint white clothing. The exact mix probably doesn't really matter. You make your own colour to suit your own needs. I think the key is that you use it on top of a white undercoat, and then you still need to highlight it later on. And for the likes of this heavy here, who has the separate weapon and backpack, paint those separately and glue them on at the end, just so I can get into all the areas easier. Prefer to do it that way. And there's a few different options for the trouser colours, but most of the guys seem to be wearing the kind of blue jean look. So I'm just going to use this McCrag blue to start that. Okay, so that's one pass. You can see it's a bit patchy. This can be the case when putting down base colours, so probably let that dry fully, then give it another coat. Just using some Wa flesh now. They don't all have the same coloured trousers in the examples. The original painter changed a few of the elements just to get some different colours in, so I'm going to do the same, try and match up with what I see in those heavy metal examples. Which I suppose it makes sense that they're not all wearing exactly the same coloured items. They all have their own gear that they've picked up over time. But there will be those kind of common elements to tie them together. Like I say, I'm going to try and always make sure that there's a red skull somewhere on them. They seem to have a skull sculpted in to their clothing somewhere, or there's like a necklace or whatever, so I'm going to make sure that those are always painted red. Maybe call them the Red Skulls or something like that for their gang name. I do enjoy trying to work out what the original artist or painter used in their colour schemes to try and match up. So it gives you something to aim towards, kind of a standard to try and imitate. And even if you can't quite match the quality, you can at least have a go at doing it. What I certainly can't match is the pace that they worked at. When you hear stories about them, the original painters in the heavy metal studio, how quickly they were able to knock out miniatures, and at that standard, I think I'm about 10 times slower. But I'm trying to keep things neat and tidy as I go. I think that's always the best approach for me anyway. Maybe start using a detailed brush too early. But it's just how I paint, just how I feel comfortable painting. So I've got Stegadon scale green to use on one of the other miniatures, and then also the Dark Reaper. As you can see, it's definitely going to be a couple of coats of that. A couple of red t-shirts to do now. Just using Mephiston red for that. Incredibly intricate sculpting on that chain round the neck. You can see all the little metal links. Very impressive. Again, sculpted it 1:1. There's no zooming in like you can with CAD. And then the leader also has the red t-shirt. I've just noticed a bit where I'm going to have to come back in with the skin tone just above the t-shirt neckline. This is what happens when you start painting the miniatures and getting up close to them. You start to notice little areas that you need to fix or come back to. And then I think I'll add the red for the axe now also. Very distinctive axe design. I presume there's something listed in the rules for this kind of weapon. Looks like it's some sort of power axe. There's not a huge amount of red to paint on these Orlocks, which is good, kind of puts them in contrast to the Goliath gang I painted earlier. We've got lots of red. Just painting all the boots now with some grey blue by Vallejo. Just a nice alternative bluish tone to use. Because I can see in the originals that the boots have definitely got a blue tone. It just acts as an alternative to the other blues I've used on the trousers and things. Maybe a bit unnecessary, but I can see the originals, the painter was maybe using a palette and just mixing up colours as they went, creating slightly different tones of blue. And then my plan will be to use a couple of shades, a couple of washes on them to darken them down. And definitely a couple of coats to build up the colour. using some Ushabti bone on the bandanas and sashes. I don't think I need to go as low as Sandry Dust. I think this will be fine. I can't quite remember how I did those 3 previously, so I'll just go with this bone colour. Yeah, there's quite a lot of painting in these miniatures, just due to the number of different items on them that need different colours. There's a lot going on in the designs, and at a certain point the kind of methodical approach isn't much use. You just have to start grabbing a paint that you need in any one particular stage and just going for it. Just try and get rid of all the blank areas, get them all coloured in. There's quite a lot of belts and buckles and chains and things, all overlapping each other. Straps over the shoulder and accessories all need picking out. Should get away with just one pass for this colour. It's going to be layered up quite a bit. Yeah, it's definitely 2 coats with the Eshin Grey. Not sure if it's due to the amount of times I've thinned it out, but what I've got here doesn't coat particularly well. But in saying that, it's not a base paint, it is a layer paint. I just think it works well as a starting point for these leather jackets or waistcoats, because I will be able to darken it down using Nuln Oil or some other wash. I'd like to have recorded the first 3 that I had painted of these Orlocks, just to act as a reference for myself when painting the rest like this. I didn't make any notes or anything, so I'm kind of having to start again in terms of what colours to use to get the look that I want. But the Eshin Grey's been used on all the little leather straps and things across the miniatures. Been quite a few different parts to pick out. So these guys get quite fiddly quickly when painting them. A lot of overlapping details from the different layers of clothes to the various belts and straps and buckles and things. Now just Castellan green for the gun casings, which is a bit more Warhammer, it's a bit more Cadian shock troops. Maybe these guys have found a cache of weapons or something. I'm trying to be neat with the base paints, but as I've said, can just tidy things up. I suppose the design of these guys very similar to the Katachan jungle fighters. If you wanted to do some conversions or whatever, probably be able to do something with those. But to be honest, with the Necromunda range from the 90s, it's a really good selection of miniatures to get. Beyond those that came in the individual gang boxes, there was all various alternative sculpts, different leaders, different heavies. So they certainly made a good go at producing the minis. You can see there how blotchy the skin paint is with that shade that I used. Sorry, that contrast paint that I used. So that'll need quite a lot of work to smooth out. Anyway, this stage is just about getting paint onto the miniature, kind of establish the main colours where they need to be. And I'm just looking across to the page of heavy metal painted examples, just to kind of keep me right in terms of the colours I'm using. It's not going to be perfect, but I like to try and get close. The last colour before tackling all the metal parts is a scrag brown, and over all the kind of straps that need that. Very possible that I'll go over the edge when you're doing these, but then I find it easy to tidy that up. Just want to eliminate the white. But the leader here has got quite a few of these kind of brown belts, so there's going to be a little bit of care needed now. And then up and over the shoulder, where he's got this kind of bandolier thing, just with the same brown. The little buckles and things will get picked out once I start doing the metal, so I just want to get the brown in and around where it needs to be. Onto the last one now, with the passive metal, just using lead belcher for it. I think this has been the slowest stage, just due to the amount of metal parts to pick out, and in particular those chains that are dotted around the miniatures take a while to paint. The reason is I'm trying to be really neat with it and not going over the edges. Especially when you're doing the silver or the metals, you really don't want to go over the edge because it just breaks the illusion. So I've been trying to be neat as possible and then correcting any mistakes that I make now, so that I end up with that decent base layer. Because if you spend the time now making sure to get all those different colours dotted in, makes it easier in the following stages, and it's always worth just spending the time getting it right. I do think that this first stage in painting the base colours is the most important one, because if you get this right and you get everything nice and neat and tidy, then all the subsequent work gets a bit easier and looks a lot better. I don't personally feel that there are any special tricks or techniques really beyond just trying to be neat and tidy. I think just taking your time is the very best tip or technique to use, and definitely using a brush with a decent tip to it so that you can better control what's happening. And then I'm just checking around the mini to try and spot anywhere that I've not caught yet. The proportions of this miniature are brilliant. You know, the size of the gun is, and it's obviously oversized, but it nonetheless works really well. Just catch the skull on the back of the jacket now. I think, to be fair, it's more of like a skull biting down on a dagger, I think. Just all good kind of biker gang imagery. Then for up on the hair, not done any of them with blonde hair yet, so I think I'll go for the start of a blonde hair look. There's an example of the mini painted by the heavy metal team with this guy with blonde hair, so I'll go with that. Okay, that's the 5 of them done now. The base paint's all in place. So yeah, it took a bit of time. It's kind of been my week's hobby time used up so far on these guys. The leader was the one that took longest to do, just given all those chains and different belts and buckles and things to try and cover. But I mean, if you wanted to, you could leave the miniatures there. I mean, you have painted them up, multiple colours used. If you were to base them, it'd certainly be ready to use in a game. But of course we're going to do more than this. Try and make them look a bit better. That's where I've gotten to. So yeah, the next stage in the next kind of week or so's work is going to be the shading, or using the washes to develop my outlines and shading on the various colours, and that's going to improve them a huge amount, and it's a lot of fun to do that stage also. Always look forward to that. In any case, until the next video, thanks very much for watching.